forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March.
Again, rebounded by Indiana. The game is over.
For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk,
Oh, he just shook the gravity.
and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Deace.
A day we weren't sure was ever going to get here, but a glorious day it is. Welcome to the return of Big Ten football here on Bigger Ten. I'm Steve Deace with my partner, platonic only, Aaron McIntire. Although I could kiss you right now. I'm so excited, my friend. How are you?
Not that good. No matter what happened today, I'm not that good.
My excitement has limits, even when it comes to Big Ten football. So here's what we're going to do this week. We're going to forego our normal way of doing things, our normal MO, and we're just going to sit here and go over the announcement made today, what stood out to us, and what we think this means going forward, some of the questions that need to be answered. And as long as it takes, might take 10 minutes, might take 30 minutes, I don't know. But there's just so much that happened today and so much that occurred, Aaron, to even get us to this point. I felt like if we did a top five, it would almost kind of, be cumbersome.
Yeah.
Because I want us to be free to kind of explore all the various tentacles of this story. So let me just throw at you then an open-ended, big picture question to get us going. Your thoughts?
So I've kind of got three big takeaways, and we can unpack them as they come, and I might think of more as I just kind of stream of consciousness do this. The first one, obviously, I think is on everybody's mind right now. Aside from the specifics, aside from who's going to face whom, what game is going to be dropped, what does that look like, predictions, schedules, over-unders, all those types of things, those fun things that we're going to be getting to here in the coming weeks. Man, we walked out of here about 5 weeks ago. You were dejected. You were freaking dejected. I was too, but I remember telling you, I don't think this is over yet.
I do remember you telling me that.
I can't see those guys, the Bucknuts, and I can't
just
see the Iowa fans
down. Yeah.
I can't see the Nebraska fans, the Husker fans, just taking that line down. Who were the ones leading the charge? Well, by all accounts, it was Ohio State and Nebraska. So Ohio State and Nebraska, thank you very much. But the big picture here is it's just good to know that we'll be able to have probably most of you listening, watching to this, probably your favorite escape maybe of the year back, which is Big Ten college football. I mean, there's nothing quite like it. A cold or a chilly fall afternoon or evening, sitting down watching a Big Ten football game. There's nothing quite like it. So it's good. And I'm not going to make fun of the Corona Bros right now. I'm going to have plenty of time to do that on Twitter later. But despite all of that, the frustration that we felt, not only at the Corona Bros this entire offseason, but then in the last month, 5 weeks, the elitism that we purportedly saw on display from the college presidents. I think a lot of that is probably going to be forgotten once we kick off the first Saturday that we do, because we got the thing that we wanted. By all accounts, team reality, as we like to call it, won, at least this day. And so I think at the end of the day, point fingers all you want, jab all you want. It's just good to have, just to know that college football, as we know it, as Big Ten fans know it, it's good to know that that's back. Second observation, and I'll run through these and you can maybe comment, question, insult. Second observation, and this is kind of a big one, based on what was done for the coverage of this today. There's going to be 9 games, it sounds like. I thought for all of the what in the world are they doing? There's like no imagination whatsoever. There's no novelty in a year that's filled with novel things of the negative variety. There was no novelty to that original Big Ten schedule that they put out 5-6 weeks ago. And like, what's going on? It just seems kind of random. Well, what we don't know the exact opponents yet. But what we do know about the schedule, I think, is inspired, Steve. I know you echo a lot of the same thoughts that I'm going to have as well here, which is 8 games. 8 games plus 1 basically is what we're doing. 9 total games. Yes, you're compressing this. You backed yourself into a corner, but you're getting as much as you possibly can while still being eligible for the college football playoff. So that's one box checked as well. Secondly, I think. Man, I think that 9th game, having all of the teams play on Big Ten Championship Saturday, brilliant idea. Having the 7th place team in the West play the 7th place team in the East, first place versus first place, and all points in between. That's an inspired idea because it's 1, novel. That's really cool. And 2, that's going to give you an extra game during a Saturday where there are not a whole heck of a lot of games. So that's probably going to make up a decent chunk of revenue that you would have lost by not even having that 9th Saturday or what have you. So I think the scheduling so far, from what we know of it, very, very novel, very inspired. So good job on that as well. The third thing, though, that I'm not really worried about, the testing protocols here. There is one part of this that I think is different from basically any other league, professional or college, Steve, that we have studied or that we know of yet. And that is the 21-day period of having to sit out if you test positive. That goes against even the CDC guidelines.
It doubles the CDC guidelines. Yes, actually. It's 10 days.
10 days, and there's hypotheses that you're even only contagious for about 6 days, 5 or 6 days, if you do have enough of the virus in your body. So that as far as testing protocols go, it sounds like it's going to be really cumbersome. But on the plus side, it sounds like they're actually going to be doing the same type of testing that the NBA and the NFL have been doing. How have they been doing, Steve? Have you noticed how many positives have they had?
NFL has 1 player on its COVID list right now.
NBA, last I checked, and of course there's not as many teams there now because they're in the middle of the playoffs, but their testing numbers were incredibly good. So if that holds true, NFL is not a bubble, NBA was, what have you. If that holds true, their testing methods, then I think somebody's actually going to be sick that comes off positive, which is what you kind of want to find if you're hunting for positives, are who's going to be symptomatic, because those are going to be the people who spread it the most. So those are kind of my big 3 takeaways.
Yeah, I think those are 3 good places to start. I'll take them one by one. I think, and I touched on this yesterday on Michigan podcast, I think we have to acknowledge who is primarily responsible for this. And listen, the advances in testing deserve some credit and acknowledgement, no doubt about it. It is funny that we had several of these advances come down the pike, literally like right after the Big Ten made its announcement, and one of them was within their own conference at the University of Illinois. Okay, but those advances absolutely deserve some credit, but those advances were there 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, and the Big Ten didn't act. I think President Trump deserves some credit, no question about it. He brought this issue to the forefront with the power of his platform. But ultimately, I think he did that because of who I think gets the credit here. All of you do. I mean, the unified voice of players, their families, the coaches, the fans, and some small part that shows like this around I don't know that our show in particular played any kind of part, but a show like this in every state and every fan base, you know what I'm saying? That kind of combined voice of all of those forces forced the Big Ten's hand here and brought us to this moment. And ultimately, the customer is always right until you don't want them to be a customer anymore. Ultimately, when the American people want something, they still kind of tend to get it. They've just really got to make it clear, this is what we want. You made it very clear that this is what you wanted. And you weren't going to take no for an answer because the customer is always right. And today the Big Ten agreed. You are right. We can't hold this position anymore. And we have to finally acknowledge the advances in testing that have been there for weeks now. But we just frankly were either too stubborn or butthurt to go back on our previous decision. I also think if you watched the press conference today, the level of professionalism, the level of detail was very impressive, which only makes how this all went down back on August 11th look even worse in my view, Aaron, because now we kind of know what they're capable of. We know that they can tell us the truth. We know that they can be transparent. We know that they can engage us as their customers and fans and not send us, sternly worded press releases with no specifics like we're their children, right? Now that we know what they are capable of, that they're actually, hey, there's a reason why this guy's got a PhD in this and she's got a PhD in that, as opposed to telling us, well, I'm the president of the University of Minnesota. I don't even know if I voted to cancel the season. Voting, what is it? Yeah. Okay. The way that today went off really makes how terrible things looked back on August 11th look even worser. Okay? Because it shows you now that they could have been professional and honest and transparent about this the entire time. They just chose not to be.
And that's kind of as far as my attitude goes, Steve. That's where I'm stuck here. It's like, let's say, so I'm your employee. I don't know if you knew that. You do pay me money as I condescend to you right here live on YouTube. But anyway, it would be like if I just slacked off on the job, just took advantage of your of the amount of money that you pay me, and just slacked off completely for months and months and months and months, and it just got on your nerves. But because we were friends, you didn't want to say anything or anything like that. But finally, you came to a point where you gotta either fire me or give me a warning. And so you be the gracious guy and you give me a warning, and then lo and behold, next thing you know, I'm freaking killing it.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do with that?
Which just pisses me off all the more because that shows me you could have been killing it the entire time. You just took advantage of me.
At least you have it now. So it's like, what do you freaking do with that?
Yeah. The second point that you made about the schedule, there's 3 layers of genius in the 9-game schedule that they have unveiled today. The first, obviously, you touched on with what that does from a television revenue standpoint. The Big Ten's losing a lot of market share here this first month plus of the season. You're not going to gain it all back in one weekend, but man, you're going to gain back a massive chunk when all of your teams are playing the most important weekend of the year. That's the weekend we're deciding who makes the playoff, right? So so when every other league is not playing except their championship game, your teams are going to be playing all day long. That doesn't make up for losing a month and a half of market share, but dude, it takes a pretty big bite out of that apple. That is whoever's idea that was. I don't know if Barry Alvarez ran the scheduling committee. I'm not sure if it's his idea or not. Wouldn't surprise me, knowing Barry in a past life, if it was his idea, because he's sly as a fox like that. That was a great idea. The other thing that it does too, you mentioned from an exposure standpoint, you mentioned from a scheduling standpoint. What I like that it also does, though, is from a playoff standpoint. Remember, Barry Alvarez was on the college football playoff committee. By the way, do you know who's the chair of the committee this year? Who's on the committee this year? Is Gary Barta, the athletic director at Iowa, was on the committee this year. Yeah. But Barry Alvarez was on the committee the year that Ohio State went to the playoff without winning the Big Ten. So if we get to a situation, you have Pat Freiermuth, for example, is back at Penn State. A lot of rumors as we're taping this that Micah Parsons is going to reconsider and come back and play. Let's say Penn State's only loss this year is to Ohio State. They finished second in the East. They get to go play Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska. Pick the team you think's going to finish second in the West, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And they get to play them, and that's a marquee win on national TV with the playoff committee watching. And they're sitting there at 9-1. they're absolutely in the conversation at that point, when typically you'd be out of sight, out of mind, because you're not playing that weekend. I remember for me as a Michigan fan, that same season, we had lost that double overtime, excruciating game to Ohio State, and we were sitting there. We were number 4 in the country after that game, so still in the top 4, but then we didn't play another game, and the University of Washington kept playing, won the Pac-12 championship, and ended up passing us, right? So I think that's another reason that you put that 9th game in there as well. So you've got exposure for your league as you're trying to make up for some lost time from a market share standpoint. You're taking a big chunk out of lost television revenue by having all of your teams play at a time when most of the other leagues are not going to be playing. And then the third thing is you give your number 2 team, if their record is good enough, a chance at one more resume building win to make a case for the playoff. I mean, the genius of that scheduling is on multiple levels.
A couple of more thoughts on the schedule as well. That is good, because here's the thing. If you got into a position where you were starting the season even later this fall, like in November, but Ohio State had absolutely no chance. Let's be honest. This is all about Ohio State here.
Yeah.
Had no,
and maybe
no
Penn
chance.
State if Micah Parsons comes back.
Yeah. And Penn State or Ohio State had absolutely no chance of making it. That almost makes things worse, man. Because if we could play in November, why couldn't we have played 2 weeks before that and still had a chance? So that's one thing. The other thing is that they made this decision at the very, very, very last possible moment for this conversation to even have a chance of happening right now, because we've got a couple of schools that are still on pause at the moment, so they need a ramp up phase as well. And that leads me into the last kind of sub thought on this as well. One thing that might be a blessing in disguise, because this is going to be another 5 weeks, I think 4 or 5 weeks.
35 days.
Before we get going here with the Big Ten season. I would have preferred to start it even a week sooner, but it being 5 weeks away at least gives guys that have maybe not been going 100% in practice or have not been practicing like the couple of schools you've mentioned so far, it gives them a chance to get back in shape and get back in football shape as well. I know Tyler Goodson's dad, Maurice Goodson, actually came out, and Tyler Goodson, Iowa running back, came out and said, at least from his standpoint as a father of one of these athletes, big concern for him, even bigger than COVID right now, is injury.
Sure.
Is injury. So that gives,
particularly at a position like running back, that takes a big pounding. You bet.
Yeah. So that gives guys a little bit more of a chance to kind of get back into shape and ramp up, cycle up again. I don't know if they needed 5 weeks, but at least, it's a little bit more time, because as an athlete, this is a dumb question, but I have to ask it anyway. If I'm a college athlete, am I more worried about a soft tissue or a joint injury or COVID? It's the former.
Yeah.
It's definitely the former.
If I looked at the data, one is much more of a threat to my future than the other. So let's get to the testing part of this. I think, the devil is in the details here. I think this is where, in the SEC had to do this too. I remember covering Jerry DiNardo's first year at Indiana at Big Ten Media Days. And he's now at the Big Ten Network. And he had come from the SEC where he had coached at I think it was LSU and Vanderbilt. And the first question that DiNardo was asked was, what's the biggest difference between the Big Ten and the SEC? And you know what his answer was? He laughed and he said, we don't have faculty reps in the SEC, meaning we don't have representatives from the faculty following our students around to make sure that the tests are done on time, that paper is turned in. Okay. It's a different culture up here. But even in the SEC, their school presidents still extracted a bit of a bounty, a bit of a toll, if you will, that the programs had to pay to play. And the toll that was extracted for the presidents in the SEC was to start their season at the end of September to make sure that the Sun Belt wave that was making all the news at the time, remember, you go back to early August, the Sun Belt wave was still cresting back then. They wanted the political cover to have that thing subside, have the students come back when we all knew there would be a rush of positives, let that wave subside, and then they wouldn't take as much political heat for playing football with those two things going on in their region as a backdrop. Right. And so that's why the SEC moved to September the 26th, that was the price that the presidents wanted the programs to pay. Hey, you want to come on the college football highway? This is the toll you have to pay to get our yes vote. Okay. The toll that the Big Ten presidents have extracted is higher. It's the testing. And it's not just the testing, but the testing metrics. And you can almost kind of read between the lines, almost as if the presidents were saying, you know what, man, you guys have been busting our balls with your tweets for the last month in press releases about your outstanding test numbers, no positives, 1 positive, 2 positive, 3 positives. Okay, put your money where your mouth is, big boy. Let's see what you got. Because what they're saying right now is you're not allowed at any point during the year to have any more than 5% of your team test positive to avoid your whole program being shut down for a week. Now, if we're talking an 85-man roster, that means you can't have any more than 5 positives at any time during the year, or you will be shut down for a week. Any player, as you referenced earlier, any player that tests positive is a 21-day quarantine from playing football. Again, that's twice the length of time recommended by CDC at the moment at 10 days. So this was the toll that you knew the presidents weren't going to walk away with nothing. That's just not how politics works. The SEC presidents, they don't have nearly the power the Big Ten presidents do, and they didn't walk away with nothing. The Big Ten presidents were going to be given some okay, this is the measure, the price that we have to pay to get you to relent. And the price is, hey, you guys are going to bust our balls in the media with all these outstanding test results this month. Better keep it going. Because if you have even a little bit of slippage, you're done. You're not playing. Not playing that Saturday. That could be the difference in you playing in the conference championship game, Ohio State. That could be the difference in you being bowl eligible, a lot of other programs. And so the bluff has been called at the poker table of these programs that have been bragging about their testing results. I don't think they've been lying, but now we're going to find out for sure, right? Because those numbers are going to have to not just be legit now, they're going to have to remain legit. Now, one of the things that's come up a lot since the announcement is how are they going to make sure they don't have, look at all the cancellations around college football. Well, first of all, it's a little overblown. Right now, about 14% of the games have been postponed or canceled so far. Okay. But almost all of the postponements and cancellations that you've seen have not been because of positive tests. They've been because of the contact tracing required by the positive tests. Meaning, 1 or 2 guys test positive. We now got to, hey, who have they interacted with? And, well, given we're in the middle of practice now for the year.
Everybody.
And the season, everybody on the team, essentially. Okay? That's where Georgia Southern played without 30 guys. Arkansas State went over to Kansas State last Saturday, beat them without 20 players. They didn't have 20 positives. Because I've even heard, and you could probably guess who it is. I've even read sports writers say, how is it safe for these guys to play with 30 positives? They don't have 30 positives. They have a few positives, but then kept everybody out because of the contact tracing. And the nature of the PCR testing requires, it's a slow burn. Okay, so it's not an instant daily, get an instant answer test. And so it requires contact tracing as a follow-up. That is a monumental Herculean task. A lot of these Big Ten presidents are trying to perform it right now with bringing the students back to school, and it's a heavy, heavy chore. So with the antigen testing that's going to be done, this will be much more in line with the NFL. If you go to they're not in a bubble in the NFL, but every player, support staff, coach, etc., is instantly antigen tested before they go into the facility that day, period. Before they go to the stadium to play in a game, period. Nobody is in that stadium. Nobody is in that football building any day that is positive. They know who's positive right away. And because they're doing it every single day, for example, I tested you yesterday, you were negative. I tested you today, you're positive. Because I didn't test you 3 days ago, I don't have to do 3 days of contact tracing. You know what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. With the PCR testing, I'm doing that 2-3 days a week. Well, I got to go back and contact trace everybody you've been encountered with in the time since our last PCR test. With this kind of testing, since I'm doing it every single day, that's going to really cut down the risk of seeing these masses of players sitting out with contact tracing, because you're on a daily basis now, you know whether these guys are positive or not. So I would not be surprised, actually, especially because today is September 8th. 17th when you're watching this. The first game is in 35 days. I mean, think of the advancements we've heard involved in rapid fire testing in the last 35 days, right? How much more better do you think this is going to be 35 days from now? I wouldn't be shocked at all. Maybe we'll have a team or two that has to sit because of an outbreak, but I don't think you're going to be reading every week, this school's got 10 guys out, this school's got 8 guys out, this school's got because that's all based on contact tracing in most of these cases.
This is why one of my predictions, I'm not sure if I made it on this podcast, has been that the testing advancements, I think we're actually going to have, this is now a kind of a different topic here, that we're going to have a pretty robust out-of-conference, non-conference college basketball season, I believe. I think we're going to have so many different rapid testing advancements, and teams can just come. It's a much different animal, obviously, than football. You can have a bunch of different teams come play in a couple of different gyms on a campus. The day that we're taping this, there's supposed to be some news coming out about the college basketball season as well. So we'll talk more about that next week. But that's a reason for hope and optimism as well. There's been a lot more optimism this entire time, even so, about college basketball than there has been about college football. But I think that's a good point, and one that I haven't really thought about as much, which is, you know what, we made all this progress, and there really has been some developments in terms of the availability of these rapid testing kits and the actual advancements as well, the FDA approvals. There has been some legitimate advancement in that. It's not like it was available exactly, when the Big Ten originally canceled. But having said that, it's good that they're finally coming around and finally recognizing what has been there for weeks now.
So let's talk about now this from a football perspective, Aaron. What do you want to see in that schedule? There's a lot of talk they're just going to take the 10 games they came out with in August, shave 2 games off of it for every team, and it will be 1 home and 1 away divisional game, and then that will be just your 8-game schedule. So what was the ad? So if that is what they do, and they're supposed to announce it later this week, that would mean take the additional game that everybody was given. For Michigan, it was at Northwestern. Do you remember what Iowa's game was?
Maryland. Okay,
so if that's what they do, take those games away, the additional 10th game that we were all given in August, take that game away, and then to make sure everybody has 4 home and 4 away, whatever is the odd game there that gives you a 5th home or 5th away game, that one would then go, that divisional game would then go as well.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the more games you take away before that ninth Saturday, or that 9th week, I should say, the more games you take away, the easier it becomes. I don't know exactly. I don't really have any ideas. I mean, it would be nice. I would be just fine if, Iowa didn't have to play Ohio State or Penn State. But, that would be all. They were both on the schedule. More likely than not, you're already taking away Maryland. So more likely than not, Iowa is going to have to play one of Penn State or Ohio State. So just as an Iowa fan, that's probably baked into the cake. You're going to have to.
Were they already guaranteed games on the 2020 schedule? For Iowa,
yeah.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I think
back-to-back weeks.
I think you're probably still going to end up playing both of them then would be my guess.
So that's super cool. And then, of course, it's not good. I don't think it's really, Steve, it's not really going to look a heck of a lot different in terms of the actual
I think the order is going to be a lot different.
The order is going to be different. I think it's going to be front-loaded with probably front-loaded with a bunch of rivalries. Hopefully. Yep. That's what I would hope for anyway.
I'll be fascinated to see if Michigan, Ohio State is put on its traditional Thanksgiving weekend, or if they play it December 12th, the last scheduled week of the regular season. I'll be fascinated to see what they do with that. Whether they move it, because both are traditional. You either make it you put it Thanksgiving weekend when it's traditionally played, or you make it the last game of the season when it's traditionally played, right? I think that will be one of the things to look for later this week with what they'll do there. I think the first week is going to be all interdivisional games. All right, so if your 2 interdivisional games are Penn State and Ohio State, I think you're opening the season with one of those 2 teams. would be my guess. My guess is Michigan will I know we'll lose Northwestern. That was the extra game. I think we're going to probably end up losing the home game with Purdue because I think that was the odd numbered game. So I think Michigan could be looking at opening at Minnesota, for example. I could either opening at Minnesota or with Wisconsin at home. That would be, I think, Michigan's opening game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together. I mean, just from an Iowa fan's perspective, I would rather not open the season with Ohio State or Penn State.
Yeah, I hear you.
Really would rather not do that
because they would both also be on the road, right?
Yeah, but here's what I would ideally rather have: football.
That's true. Well, isn't it fun to have this conversation though?
Instead of why do these dang presidents keep screwing us over?
We are complaining. But we're not really complaining.
Yeah.
All right. In fact, we're
these
just
are good problems to have.
Yes, we're just fan kvetching here. Okay. Yeah. All right. So believe me, I mean, Aaron doesn't mind if he had to play Ohio State every single week. Okay. But since we're granted the luxury of these conversations again, right? Let's entertain them. I think you're probably looking at starting your year against Ohio State or Penn State.
Yeah.
Because I think the interdivisional games will be the first 2 weeks is what I think will happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And that would be, that'll be fun. I don't think you should end. I don't think you should. You've got to end the season with a divisional rivalry.
Yeah.
I think there's no question about that. But opening the season maybe with a cross division game, and then maybe once in the middle of the season as well. That would be fun to spice things up. But
well, then maybe does that mean if you look at the schedule they gave Michigan before, if we take out Purdue at the top and Northwestern at the end and keep everything else the same, that would give Michigan. They would start the year with Wisconsin at home. At Minnesota, Penn State at home. Those would be their first 3 games. But in a league as deep and good as ours, unless you're recruiting at the level Ohio State is and then has a Heisman Trophy quarterback on top of that, is there any possible way to get an easy schedule in this league if you're going to play only each other for 8 consecutive weeks? I don't think that there is. I mean, some slates will be more favorable than others. But take away Ohio State's talent. We're not going to look at the other 13 team schedules and think, well, they got off easy. Because there's not a lot of easy outs on your schedule.
No, and this is not, this is an atypical year. There's no cycle up period like there is, like there is in a typical year where you get 3 non-conference games and maybe 2 of them are cakewalks or right. Easier opponents. It's going to be with the exception of Ohio State. Ohio State is really the only team in the league that I see that has a chance of really kind of walking. And
you don't want to play them that opening week too, man. No, I mean they're going to come out. They're going to feel like they saved Big Ten football. Yeah. I mean, they're freaking. I mean, dude, it's going to feel like they're going to come out like they do for the Michigan game that opening week of the season.
This whole season's going to be really wacky. It's like wacky results. Like I don't.
If they put out any win totals, I wouldn't bet any of them.
That's what I'm
because
saying.
Of the
I don't even want to bet I don't even want to bet the single games. They're just going to be that weird.
The quarantine rules in the Big Ten. If it's a 21-day quarantine for any positive test, I mean, dude,
That's
you
like half
see
the season? Almost.
Yes,
half the
it
season.
is almost half the season. You're Ohio State, man. You're cruising along. You're 4-0. You're just friggin' taking names. Justin Fields positive.
Yeah.
That could be your whole season right there, yeah. Right? So in many respects, every Big Ten team with these testing protocols, and I really think because of the antigen testing, that it's not, the 5% number is not going to be as difficult as who's the one person I can't afford to lose, and can I not get them a positive? You know what I'm saying? That's the thing you have to avoid. If I'm Ohio State, I'm not so much concerned about forfeiting a game from 5% positives as much as I'm concerned of if I just get a couple of positives and one of them's named Justin Fields and it's like the first week of November. Mm-hmm. And that just screws my entire season, right? That's where I would stay away from win totals. I mean, based on personnel, Ohio State, it's the Ohio State Invitational. But if a couple of properly placed positive tests in any given week and one of them's initials are JF, that changes the whole season, Aaron. Changes the whole entire season.
Yep, no doubt about it. And I mean, so far in the other leagues that have started up to this point, it's hard to tell because we've had one week of ACC and Big 12 football at the time that we're taping this, but by that time, we'll see what that looks like. Chances are we will see what that looks like.
We'll have almost a full month of SEC football too.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts?
Nope. Just good to have football back. Obviously, it's kind of weird. I don't have the excited butterflies feeling that I do during a typical season, but man, it is legitimately good. It's legitimately good to have that. Have it back.
I just can't wait to just again sit in the man cave and hear the fight song, man.
Yeah.
Even if it's to an empty Michigan stadium, just to hear it again. So here's our vow to you. As much as we possibly can, unless somebody in administration says or does something so exceedingly dumb we can't ignore it. When we return next week, it's just all business. Not the monkey business, the political business, and all the other crap we've had to talk about. I don't know about you. Are you done with that stuff?
On this
done enough of that?
podcast,
Yeah.
Yes.
When you like to just stick to sports, when you like to do that,
We would like to,
So-
but some people have not been giving us that luxury.
we're going to hope and pray that now we have that luxury, at least for the remainder of this year. So our hope when we come back next week, it's just talking ball. That's it. For Aaron McIntire, don't forget, I'm Steve Deace, and keep hitting that like, subscribe, rate, share, 5-star review, whether it's YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, however you access Bigger 10. The more you can do those things for us and help to spread the word, the more it helps the Bigger 10 show to grow. Back again next week, and we are going to be talking some ball. See you then on Bigger 10.